All right, a lot of stuff going on. There's all this kerfuffle in the Republican Party, but we got to talk about this scandal. This is an unbelievable scandal. I'm starting to feel like Alex Jones. I'm starting to feel like InfoWars. You know, I'm going to sit here with this big red face and start my sound like I'm going to have a heart attack. Like, the DNC and the Clinton campaign, it is now clear that they paid Fusion GPS for this Steele dossier. This is the one with the Russian hookers, but it was also supposed to establish Trump's business ties with Russia. We don't know how much of it, if any of it, has been confirmed. They're now doing all this stuff. They're on TV. The spokespeople are saying, oh, well, this was a GOP thing for the primaries, and then they just passed it on to us. Not true. The GOP did go to Fusion GPS, the company that did this dossier. Somebody at the GOP did go to Fusion GPS trying to stop Trump, but they had not gotten this Steele dossier yet. That was done by the Democrats. And the guy who did it, I'm going to try and lay this out because it's so complicated and it's still developing. The guy who did it was a lawyer. What they do is they always get lawyers to do this so that the lawyer can then say, oh, I can't tell you about it because it's client privilege, so I can't tell you anybody about it. But this is from the same company, Perkins Coie, that hired, what was their name? CrowdStrike. Okay, now listen, right. Okay, same lawyers, right? They hired CrowdStrike. What did CrowdStrike do? CrowdStrike went into the DNC computers. Remember, the DNC computers were hacked by Russia, except we don't know if they were hacked by Russia because these lawyers hired CrowdStrike, and they're the only people who looked at those computers. Well, didn't the FBI look at them? No, the FBI said, oh, well, if you've done, if you've looked at them and you're happy, that it's fine, that's fine with us. This is all about James Comey. It all comes back to Comey, and some of it gets back to Mueller, too, the guy who's now investigating this. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing story. Remember the big CIA, the 17 intelligence people, agencies, they all said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin personally ordered the hacking of the DNC and the dissemination of emails from key staffers via WikiLeaks in order to damage Hillary Clinton's candidacy. That's what we listened to for the first 6 months of Trump's campaign. The only reason we know this is because CrowdStrike hired by these lawyers who also hired Fusion GPS to do this stuff. I mean, it is unbelievable. And now at the New York Times, they're saying, well, we were going to report it, but they lied to us. Hillary Clinton lied to us. How did reporters at the New York Times think to themselves, oh, it's Hillary, she must be telling the truth? I mean, listen to her. She's still lying. She was on the book TV selling her book, and she's still telling the same old Clintonian lies. It is like a script. Listen to this.
I would say it's the same baloney they've been peddling for years, and there's been no credible evidence by anyone. In fact, it's been debunked repeatedly and will continue to be debunked. But here's what they're doing, and really, I have to give them credit. Trump and his allies, including Fox News, are really experts at distraction and diversion. So the closer the investigation about real Russian ties between Trump associates and real Russians, as we heard Jeff Sessions finally admit to in his testimony the other day, the more they want to just throw mud on the wall, and I'm their favorite target, me and, President Obama. We're the ones that they always like to put into the crosshairs. So, yes, I'm not surprised, but I think the real story is how nervous they are about these continuing investigations.
From Russia with love, I fly to you, much wiser since my goodbye to you.
See, I think the song should have given her away. I think when the New York Times heard that song playing, they should have said, maybe she's not telling the truth. It's that same Clinton thing. This is first they deny it, right? And then 6 months on, oh, it's an old story. And it's been debunked. When was it debunked? They just proved it. I mean, and she's talking about the uranium deal, which I'll get to in just a minute, because I just want to remind you that this Steele thing, this completely bogus Steele thing, first of all, we think a lot of the intelligence in it came from the Soviets. We know from the Russians. We know that the Russians were hiring Fusion GPS too. We know they were paying them to gather dirt too. This is the dossier that James Comey took to Obama and Trump, and he put it in that all-important daily briefing for Obama, right? That's where the most important stuff goes, which virtually guaranteed that it would become a news story, because that's when the press had it, and they released it when they knew that Obama had heard it. So Comey, so the Democrats gather this stuff. It's trash. The Democrats gather this stuff, which is probably leaked to Fusion through the Russians. Comey then gives it to Obama and Trump, guaranteeing that it leaks to the press, okay? Now, on top of this, Tucker Carlson now has a source. And Carlson, smart guy, right? He says this is a very important source, and he was kind of indicating that he would ultimately be able to reveal the name. But this is a source that is talking to investigators on the Hill. He says that Robert Mueller, who's sent to investigate the Russian ties with Donald Trump, is now investigating Paul Manafort, who was Trump's campaign manager, but not for what Manafort did with Trump. He's investigating him for what Manafort did with the Podesta brothers, with Tony Podesta, who's a lobbyist and a big Clinton donor, and John Podesta, who was Clinton's campaign manager. What was he doing? He was taking Russian interests to the Podestas to lobby Hillary, who was then Secretary of State, for Russian interests, including the taking over of our 20% of our uranium supply by this Russian company, Uranium One. Let Carlson tell it, because it's his source. Here he is.
One point in either 2013 or maybe early 2014, our source says a meeting was held that included both Tony Podesta and a representative of the Clinton Foundation. The explicit subject of that meeting: how to assist Uranium One. That's the Russian-owned company that controls 20% of American uranium production, and whose board members gave more than $100 million to the Clinton Foundation. As our source put it, quote, Tony Podesta was basically part of the Clinton Foundation. Now, apparently there was not a lot of pretending about this internally at the Podesta Group. According to our source, Manafort was clear, crystal clear, that Russia wanted to cultivate ties to Hillary Clinton in the belief she was likely to become president.
Okay, now, remember, I know this is insanely complicated, but just remember this. The FBI, we now knew that this was going on. They knew it was breaking laws, they knew it was illegal, and they buried it, right? They kept it from Congress, and they kept it from the public, and they buried it. And then about 5 years down the line, they did a plea deal with them, with the Russians, basically. They did a plea deal with them that did nothing. So Robert Mueller at the time is leading the FBI. So Robert Mueller is now investigating himself. He is now investigating the story that he buried, and it's all. And Comey is involved in everything. I mean, Comey was. I'm telling you, I'm starting to sound like Alex Jones. It's like I'm just going to have a heart attack and pitch forward into my, Comey goes back. Do you remember this Valerie Plame thing? This Valerie Plame thing drove me crazy. Valerie Plame's husband, Joseph Wilson, who was a former ambassador, wrote this piece for the New York Times in which he said that, George W. Bush was utterly wrong when he said that Saddam Hussein was trying to get yellow cake to develop weapons of mass destruction. Okay, totally wrong. Then when it turned out, and then Bush, like an idiot, apologized for this. When it turned out that Wilson was wrong and that Bush had been right, the media jumped on this absolute nonsense story that Wilson's wife, Valerie Plame, had been outed by the press, and somebody in the Bush administration had outed an active CIA agent. This turned out to be utterly untrue. Nobody in the administration did it, and the FBI knew this. The Deputy Attorney General, John Ashcroft, recused himself from the investigation. The Deputy Attorney General then appointed that guy Fitzgerald, right, who just ran rampant through the Bush administration. Who was the Deputy Attorney General? Points for answers. It's James Comey. James Comey appointed this guy Fitzgerald, who then, remember, it was going to be Fitzmas. That was what they kept calling it. It was going to be Fitzmas for the Democrats. It was going to be Christmas for them, because he was going to expose everything. And the only guy he got, and he railroaded Scooter Libby, who had been Cheney's chief of staff. And I know this is just all so complicated, but it's just Comey was in on all this stuff. And then when they investigate Hillary Clinton's emails, nothing to see. Yeah, she was a little reckless, but she didn't have intent. And he didn't even look at the computers that were hacked. He just trusted the DNC, the same lawyer who got this dossier that Comey then brought to this. I mean, these guys, it's like a James Bond movie. These guys are completely tangled up with the Russians. You know, what it really is like, it's like the fake news thing. Remember, it was the left that started fake news. The left, it was the ones that started the fake news thing. And then Trump picked it up and said, fake news, I'll show you fake news. But these things are like cigars. You can just see the Democrats kind of leaning back, we got this Russian collusion story, smoking the cigar, and then the cigar just blows up in their face. They're so dirty. So this, I just wanted to go through this, and I know it's too complicated to follow. You have to read it to see it, but it really is amazing, the connections between the Democrats and the Russians and the dirt that the FBI, you know, I said yesterday that one of the big mistakes I have made on the show is trusting Comey when he first came out. And that was because as a reporter many, many years ago, I used to cover the FBI and they were great. But it really does seem to me that they have been taken over by Democrat interests, and they are no longer really doing the job of the FBI. They are doing the job of the Democrats, like the press. All right. You know, I really feel bad that scandal. I mean, Austin was saying during one of the breaks that he didn't understand that scandal. But I mean, it is important because the reason that the Obama administration allowed, and it wasn't just Hillary Clinton, it was the entire Obama administration, the reason they allowed Putin to take control of so much of our uranium was that they wanted to have a reset with Russia so that they could pass the Iran deal, so that Russia wouldn't get in the way of the Iran deal. So it is a complete chain of corruption that went through that administration. I have always said I thought it was one of the most corrupt administrations, the Obama administration. And remember at the end, that montage we had of all the reporters saying, it was scandal-free. It was scandal-free. It was scandal-free. It was one big scandal. And I know it's complicated, but we'll talk more about it and we'll make it more clear. But now,
well, now hold on.
Yeah.
You keep saying this name Obama, and I don't know who that is.
Yeah, we've forgotten who Obama is because his legacy it's kind of like dust scattered in the All right, the mailbag.